Touching, squeezing, arresting. Yes, we're talking about the TSA right here at RT once again. The Transportation Security Administration was created in the wake of 9/11 in order to help prevent future terrorist attacks. But some people have called the TSA's tactics a form of security theater that just doesn't make us any safer. Just take a look at some of the most ridiculous examples that come to mind.
Your daughter was flagged as no fly. I said, excuse me?
It's absurd.
My life is pretty much in their hands when I walk through a body scanner with my insulin pump on.
She was right to be worried. The pump stopped working.
This woman was just doing her job, but she actually touched my vagina.
The other hand on your inner thigh, slowly go up and slide down.
We can do that out here, but if you touch my junk, I'm going to have you arrested.
Since 9/11, we have slowly seen our rights to privacy while flying dissolve. Just take a look at this timeline. Right after September 11th, the TSA immediately started making security changes. Knives were the first to be banned, then shoes needed to be removed. Following that, lighters and liquids were next to go. Mandatory full body scans came along, but that didn't make us any safer. In 2009, a bomb was smuggled onto an airplane, and just last May, 4 chef's knives were brought onto a plane. And these are just few of the numerous security breaches that we know about today. One of the biggest controversies surrounding the TSA is their implementation of naked body scanner machines, a program that's already cost taxpayers $87 million and is planning to be spread nationwide. Now, there have already been outcries about the naked scanners as a violation of privacy. But recently, bloggers uncovered fatal flaws in the scanners, revealing how they can be tricked with in-sewn pockets and metallic objects that can smuggle through pretty much anything at all. So what's the point of all this extra screening if it doesn't make us any safer? Joining me for now is Anthony Randazzo, Director of Economic Research for the Reason Foundation. Anthony, what is wrong with a little love pat down?
Well, I think there's a lot wrong with it in this particular context. There may not be anything wrong with it in the appropriate space. The simple fact of the matter is, since 2001, we have spent almost $60 billion on air security. And after 10 plus years, $60 billion, as the blogger you just alluded to just demonstrated, it is still possible to get the exact same box cutters or other things through airport security as was used in the 9/11 attacks. That is a massive waste of money.
Well, yeah, the bloggers' findings actually caused Congress to provide this report where they said, we admit there are vulnerabilities in the machines and we're going to work on it. We have 8 recommendations that we're going to put forward and really fix these machines. I mean, that's going to solve it, right?
It's not going to solve it. And the thing is, so there's a congressional report that it has pointed to nothing short of just incompetency. Incompetency in logistics. Millions of dollars worth of equipment just sitting in warehouses in Texas. Between $50 and $100 million wasted money in delivering this technology because they can't figure out how to deliver a machine from its maker directly to the airport. It's got to be routed through multiple different places the TSA is sort of set up. In TSA headquarters here in D.C., they have 4,000 employees making an average of $100,000 a year. What this speaks to is a culture of incompetency. So a lot of what has been talked about when it comes to the pat-downs, invasiveness, whether or not the technology even works, has been focused on privacy issues, when well it should be. But I think what's underlying a lot of this is just some pure incompetency with the way that the TSA is run. A lot of their failures in privacy just is they're too incompetent to understand what they're doing.
Well, okay, so we're talking about incompetency, and I can't help but think of the case of the girl who provided the TSA agents her insulin machine and said, look, I can't go through the screeners. Here's my note from my doctor. And they said, no, go through, and it broke. I mean, why? It seems like almost the government's working against their national security interests by hiring and letting the TSA hire such incompetent people to run this agency.
What's unfortunate is this is the nature of what happens with large bureaucratic organizations. And there are great people that work for the TSA, very professional people. There are some not so professional people as you're going to have in sort of any sort of organization. The problem is that the government doesn't have any incentives to really fix these problems. So I mean, you just showed a video clip of several different problems. That reel could go on for hours of hours. Almost every day it seems like there's a story of something that TSA has done wrong. Why does that continue to happen? Because what are we going to do? They're the government. They're the last stand. They're perceived as there's no other real alternative. There is an alternative. There's airports in the Orlando area that are actually getting rid of the TSA, and they're bringing in a private security contractor that's going to do as good of a job, if not better, in terms of making sure that dangerous materials don't get on planes. But they are liable if they grope people inappropriately, if they destroy an insulin machine when you've got your note from the doctor, if they don't, many of the shenanigans the TSA does, they lose their contract. City gets to keep their money. That's the kind of incentive structure that really should be used when it comes to airport security. We can look at nations around the world that do a much better job at handling security in much less invasive ways.
How could we rely on the security firm to regulate itself and really abide by these standards? I mean, will the people just sue them?
Well, one simple thing is so you can have a government official, like you could have TSA still exist under this idea of where we bring in some private security firms to actually run security. So you still have TSA, but it's a limited number of people, just the most highly skilled, so that you don't have to deal with the incompetency, who are the people that sort of are checking in on these private security firms to make sure that they meet whatever regulations that you want to set up. Maybe it's not the most perfect system, but it's a much better system than we have right now.
Well, despite Orlando, the TSA is still trying to push these naked body scanners nationwide, other than some select places that are fighting them. And they're proposing to spend, millions of more dollars
up to $1 billion.
Up to $1 billion to implement these, and they don't work. It's already been pretty much proven that they don't work. Yeah. So, the age-old question, cui bono? Who is really behind this push if they don't work? What is the point? I mean, is there some sort of massive collusion going on?
It's always possible that there's something going. I'm sure that the makers of these machines have been pushing really, really hard. One interesting thing that came out of this congressional report is there was a whole bunch of machines that help to scan your carry-on luggage that the TSA bought more than they needed. They bought way more than they needed, and they bought more than they needed knowing that it was more than they needed because they could get a bulk discount of some kind. And it's it's like maybe when you're in the grocery store and you see some sort of like buy three get the fourth free, and you realize you only need one. Maybe you don't think in that moment that actually you're not saving any money, you're spending more than you need. When you're talking about procurement on this level, somebody should be able to sit back and go, actually, we're not saving any money. We're not really getting a discount unless there is a real sort of push from behind the scenes. Or the company that's selling this perhaps made a political donation to a congressman in their county, and that congressman is encouraging TSA, go with this company, that kind of thing. Those kinds of shenanigans really do happen when you don't have
well, look at Chertoff
really
as the Rapiscan. Yes. He's working closely with Rapiscan, and he was lobbying hard to get
none of this suggests. This doesn't mean that the government needs to go out and hire a bunch of people to make this technology themselves. It doesn't mean that you can't buy things from the private sector. It doesn't mean that outsourcing is inherently bad. What it does mean is that there's right ways to do this and there's wrong ways to do this, and that we need to have a government that is responsive to critiques like this congressional report, where this congressional report should lead to people being fired. This congressional report, they are the oversight of the TSA. This is the way it's supposed to work. There should be people that lose their jobs. There needs to be incentives to get this right. There needs to be incentives to do outsourcing right. And if that doesn't happen, then I think this is a massive failure.
What do you think about the TSA now spreading these procedures to bus depots, train stations? I mean,
it doesn't make anybody safer. We have, there's the recent bomb plot that was uncovered coming out of the Middle East, and the all suggested reports say that we wouldn't have caught that bomb, which is terrible in and of itself. But if you ask most experts on terrorism, they'll tell you that if we're going to be attacked, even if an airplane is going to be attacked, it's not going to go through the TSA screeners. It's much more likely that somebody's going to try and get a job at an airport where there's high turnover to be able to find the security flaws, or that it's not going to be an airplane. Most terrorist-related attacks in the U.S. have happened with handguns. The Fort Hood shootings, for example, here in the U.S.
But also, I mean,
this isn't making us. This is not going to make us safer.
Right. I mean, it also seems like every sort of foiled plot has been somehow facilitated or provoked by elements of the government. So that is an interesting facet as well. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That was Anthony Randazzo, Director of Economic Research for the Reason Foundation.